Time is it? I have no
It
idea. I'm
is
so lost until
Saturday,
you tell me.
July 20th, 2024 at 9 a.m. sharp.
Woo. Whew.
Not dull. Very
Okay, good.
sharp this morning. Yeah. How are you guys
Man,
doing?
summer's
I have
cruising
no
by.
coffee in my house, so I'm drinking like pre-workout burn stuff. So might
Nice.
be a little bit tweaked out this morning.
Yeah, that stuff does. It's they put so much caffeine and stuff in theirs. It's
Oh
ridiculous.
man.
Hmm.
Yeah. The past few days I've been drinking those Ghost energy drink cans, and they have like I'm pretty sure there's like 300 milligrams of caffeine in a can.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous. But I
they
drink
don't.
so much caffeine, it really doesn't do anything to me. I'm like immune.
Well, that's the problem though. And then you need 300 milligrams in a
Yeah.
can to get
I
movement.
drink like 4 cans just to get a little bit awake. It's pretty awesome. How are you
Yeah.
guys doing? How was your week? How was your coding? How was everything?
Morning, Chris. Good. Good week.
Yeah.
Busy I had week.
Yeah.
a busy week this week. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Anything
But
in particular you feel like sharing about your busy week?
no, didn't get much work done in it.
Oh, sweet. All
It was
right.
just a busy
Nice.
otherwise week.
Right on. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everyone else watching, joining in the comments. I mean, I'm
Oh,
might as well
I,
just. Uh,
go ahead.
uh,
I was gonna say that I was actually morning breaks. I was actually listening to more of that book, Clean Code.
mm,
And I
me
actually,
too.
it is really nice, like, because like it's stuff you more or less know, but it's nice to be reminded of it. Because then like I was listening
Totally.
to it, and then I went back through some of my code actually the other day, and that was a really fun exercise, just going back through and like cleaning it up again, because it's like
Yeah,
nobody writes perfect stuff the first time through when you're writing it, and like
not at all.
you know,
Yeah, it's reminded me a lot of. I think one of the big takeaways that I've had so far is I think I'm on like chapter 10 or 11 now. I'm almost done the book, but
I'm
uh,
like halfway through, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of the big takeaways is the single responsibility principle, which is like one of the most important ones for developers, but it's one of the ones that I think gets broken the most too,
Oh yeah.
because it is kind of hard. Like it seems like an easy rule to follow, but it's actually not because sometimes just the way that you build an application, you need functions and classes to do more than one thing, but it is a good practice to have to do that. Responsibility principle is just saying like, a function or a class should really only have one main responsibility, if any, if it, at all more than that.
No, it is a really important one, but it's interesting too because I think when we naturally too are writing code, like we're naturally trying to think ahead, so we tend to write stuff that does do more than one thing because you're like,
Right.
oh, and like instead of breaking it up, that's not how we normally think. I think that it helps you kind of like going back is very helpful because you can see where like you've stacked stuff and you can break it apart and make it just cleaner and easier to read and easier to work with.
Yeah, totally. Well, with that, I mean, I'll introduce the topic, which is what is the importance of a supportive community in becoming a software developer? And I think, to be honest, in my opinion, this is one of the most understated things when it comes to software development. It's something that a lot of people don't really talk about, and something that a lot of boot camps don't even really emphasize or support, right? A lot of education and training materials don't even have it, right? You look at things like Udemy and Code Academy and Free Code Camp and the Odin Project, and they're great resources. Don't get me wrong, but they don't really do a lot to emphasize a community.
Well, it's crazy because I was thinking about this when we came up with the topic, but like community is important in anything you're trying to learn, dude. And like, but we
Yeah,
never emphasize it because we have this model of the individual succeeding on their own and blah blah blah. And it's like,
yeah,
yeah, that's great, but you do so much better and you become so much better when you have a supportive community to work with of people who are at different levels that you then
yeah.
all grow together. Like, yeah.
You made me think of something that's kind of interesting, and so I recently traveled to Colombia with my girlfriend and family, and one of the things that I noticed when we went to Colombia is that the community there is so much different than the United States, right? When we went to Colombia, her family and friends almost did not let us get an Uber or a taxi or anything. They almost like required us to spend a lot of time with them, which I'm not complaining or anything. I'm just saying spend a lot of time with them. And then also they drove us like everywhere. Right. And it's something that I think it's a cultural difference between like the United States. There's so much in the United States of like being self-reliant um, that you don't see in other cultures because in like Colombia, her family, I mean, they have like a very extensive family. They spend time together almost every single week, multiple times, right? Like they go to each other's house, they have dinner together, they go out and like do things together. It's a very common thing. In the US, it's very common for, I think, the opposite, where people are like, I do my thing, you do your thing. We have our own, isolated communities.
If
And
you even live close together too, like in the United States, I think
exactly.
we don't even have communities anymore.
Yeah,
It's just like
exactly.
individuals doing individual stuff. And yeah, it is. It's crazy when you go other places and they have that because it's just it's such an eye opener for like the amount of support you can have and stuff. And just like the people around you that can help you through so many things just being there, you know?
Yeah, totally. Um, so yeah, I mean, my question to you guys, I guess, is what do you think are the things that have helped you while having this community? Because that's one of the things that I think we sort of stumbled upon in our boot camp was we stumbled upon building the community of the three of us. And then I think that helped us a lot. So go ahead, Randall.
All right, so I think one of the biggest benefits of community is that you can see that you're not the only person who's stumbling. Like
Mm,
it's very easy to get down on yourself when you're trying to learn something because it's difficult, because it's you're struggling with it. And when you don't have a community, you think that everybody else is having
Yeah.
an easy time of it, especially with social media, because all they do is post about all their successes, and you're like, everybody else is succeeding, and I
totally.
must be the only idiot
Or
here.
or learn this in 12 hours, you know, and
and
like
I
are they?
Yeah, and there's this funny story about this. So, I recently met this couple, and they both work in like the financial markets, like Wall Street. And so their company is trying to get people to do this copy trading thing for like trading stocks and whatever. Like someone will trade a stock, and then anybody can just copy their trades and do it. And
Yeah.
they're reaching out to all these like really well-known, respected traders who have like huge followings on Twitter and everywhere else. And nobody wants to do it because
Yeah.
all of them because they only post their winning trades. All the
Yeah.
trades that lose, they don't want people to know they have all those losing trades. But it's like the same type of thing with coding or with anything else. If you don't have a community, all you see are other people's successes. And
Mm,
so you think that and you experience your own failures. You not only see them, you experience how terrible it is. And so you're experiencing all these negative things, and everybody else has all these imagined positive things. And it's just like, well, I just must not be cut out for this.
Dude, yeah, I think that like hits the nail on the head of why it's so important because it's you get the shared experience of seeing other people go through it, struggle, and have the same kind of problems you're having, which is like huge. I also like that, like I know especially when we started out doing that every Saturday and still meeting every Saturday, it was like for me, it was also because we had different interests, and everybody naturally brings something different to the group. You know, but even if you don't try, you just do because we have different talents, different interests. And so like it's nice too because I found that I was learning stuff that I wouldn't have sought out myself necessarily. Like, you know, like the security stuff, I learned a lot from you about that. Initially, I learned a lot about like the value of React and Next and stuff from Russell. Like, and you know, I wouldn't have necessarily found that maybe on my own had I not, you know, had we not been working together. So it's also like you get exposed to things you wouldn't have been exposed to. And just like also too, like the feedback is so helpful, I think. Like, because
yeah.
like we all had, I mean, when we were meeting, there was always weeks where like one of us might not have done anything or really struggled. But like having then, you know, getting to see the other two people, like one what they accomplished is motivating, but also just too like the support, like of like, yeah, it's cool. Like, because we went through that too before and like, or we had a bad week the other week, you know, and like it just helps you kind of keep moving and stay focused. Because that's one of like it's so easy to quit when you're by yourself. It is. It's like the
Yeah.
easiest thing in the world to do, you know? The
Yeah.
hardest thing is to keep going.
Yeah, Bryce said in the comments, get the shared experience of failing, which I think is pretty true.
Yeah.
You Randall actually made me think of something that happened this week with Jay, who's in our web dev incubator, and Jay was saying that um, when they joined, they saw everyone else doing all this coding with us, and they were like, "Oh, I must be way behind. I must not know this. This must be really hard to learn." Right. And they felt like really far behind everybody. And by having the community and sharing, and I think that's part of it too, right? You can't just be in a community and isolate yourself, because that's not being in a community. Part of a community is that you engage with that community. And that's something that we say inside this group too, is we had a live stream the other day about you get what you put in, right? And that's part of having a community, is you get out of that community what you put into it. So Jay was saying, they felt way behind, and then they shared that, and everyone else in the group was like, hey, we all felt that way too, and we've only been doing this for a few months, and look how far we've come. It's totally possible for you, right? That's like such a powerful thing, I think, for people to realize. And I think it was Bryce who said that. He was like, um, I've only been learning JavaScript for the past maybe 2 or 3 months, and he's come so far in that time that it just shows you what's possible, right? And it actually gives you that motivation to keep moving forward when you're like doubting yourself, right? And if you don't have that community, exactly what you're saying, you're just seeing people's successes around you. I mean, I experienced that. I remember looking at
Oh, yeah.
14-year-old kids on LinkedIn making amazing React projects and being like, I'll never get there. Right. But having the community of the three of us allowed me to be like, hey, I would love to do this one day. And you guys kept me motivated and accountable. And then I'm now able to do that stuff. Right. And so that is the power of the community.
Yeah, no, I think you have to have I think I like what you said too about like, you get in, you get what you put in, right? Like you have to also have like a community that also is one that fosters sharing, that,
Yes.
is like safe, where you don't feel bad about like sharing your failures and stuff too, because that's part of coding, is failing and learning from those mistakes. That's a huge part of any learning process, right? So I think that's hugely important. And like it is funny because I think so many times like these big places, like even like, well, like Bryce was saying, like his boot camp, they have a Slack, but nobody really shares. Like
Yeah.
they don't even make the effort. Like they have this like thing, like, oh, here's a community, but they
Hmm.
don't make an effort to encourage it all or to help people see how to engage with it in the right way. And then the other thing too is like I think people forget that like when we think about like our futures and try to imagine like what we can be, we rely on examples in order to envision what we can become. And so you need examples of people succeeding that are relative to you. Otherwise, it seems impossible. Like when you look online, you see, like you said, like the 14-year-olds, doing these projects.
Yeah.
It seems totally impossible because I'm not 14.
Right.
I'm 40. So it seems like, oh my God, by the time they're 40, they're gonna have 36 years more, like you just in your
Yeah.
head. So it's helpful to see other people at your level too, because then you can grow together and you can also see the successes, like you're saying, and imagine it. And it becomes a real possibility instead of just like a dream.
Yeah. And I think that's really important too, is the reality of it too, because I'm again seeing a 14-year-old post something on LinkedIn, and I don't know all the things surrounding that, like how long he's been coding for, how long that actually took him, basically anything else besides just I'm looking at a project and making up a story in my mind about it. That's almost all the time when we create stories around things like that, we're making them as exaggerated as possible and making us
Oh
seem
yeah.
like as low as possible. So having that reality of having a community where I can show a project that I've built with the community, and then a week later I can show people how to build that. And that's super, super powerful, right? Because you go from this, oh my God, that's impossible, I'll never be able to do that, to, oh, like there's somebody else who did it, and then I can see how they did it. I can ask them real questions about their struggles. Like my assumption when I saw that 14-year-old kid, show off that project, is he just started typing, and then when he finished, he had that. But the reality is there's multiple iterations of like failing that happen, right? And we see that in a community, but when you're in isolation, you don't see the failures, right? And I know we keep reinforcing that, but I think that's such an important point here, is that community gives you the reality of working in the world, right? In especially in software development, because we see all this software and we see people's successes and we just assume it's natural, it's easy, people are born that way, or they just started typing and coded it perfectly from the start, and that's not the truth ever in this.
Yeah, I also like oh Bryce also had a really he said like in the web dev he helps them keep them motivated, right? It's good to see what others are working on. But he also pointed out, I think this is also really good, like when others get stuck and he can help, how good it feels. And that's the
Yeah.
other thing, like you get to actually share your knowledge with other people, like we've been saying, which is like amazing. And I can say myself too, like, we know there's a million ways to do the same thing with coding. There always is. And like I
Yeah.
know just like watching you code like next project and stuff, I've seen you do things slightly differently than I do. And
Hmm.
some of those I've adopted because I like them better. And it's like
Yeah.
so you get these like little tricks and things that like you might never have come across because they're not in books, they're not in like tutorials and stuff. And I think it just helps you, yeah, really just realize how to get around these problems and expand your knowledge. But you have to be willing to engage and do that.
Yeah. I think you bring up another amazing point, which is actually teaching somebody something is the best way to learn anything. And I have learned that firsthand after we built this program and built this group, is that there's so many things where I'm like, I thought I really knew it and understood it, but you learn it a lot more when you're trying to explain it to somebody else. And I think that's also what Bryce is talking about is, you may think you understand it because you watch some tutorial once, right? And that's a trap that I think all software developers fall into is we watch a YouTube tutorial or whatever, Udemy, Coursera, something like that. And you just immediately assume, oh, I know that, like, I've seen it once, so I know it. Right. And then when you actually have to go and do it, and furthermore, when you have to go and teach somebody else how to do it and why you're doing it that way, it
Yeah.
uses a whole different aspect of your brain, but you learn it so much better because now you have the practice, but you also can explain to somebody else why you're choosing to do it that way versus something else. And it just cements it in your brain.
It's funny you mention that because like Aristotle said that like you only know something when you can teach others. And I
Yeah.
remember clearly too, like both when I started teaching philosophy, like how much better I understood it when I started teaching it. And then the
Yeah.
same applied to this. Once you start engaging in that way, because you do, like you said, you have to explain these things. And it's stuff you don't like when you're doing it yourself, you don't think about the explanation always. You just assume
Yeah.
you know it. And then it gives a much deeper understanding. So you get to like learn the ins and outs so much better, and it just makes you a better overall developer or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed about communities is that I like laughing. And so there's always generally
You
a good
do
sense of
what?
humor. Yeah, I know, right? There's always generally like a good sense of humor in any community that I've been involved in. And it
Yeah.
helps break up the learning. Because I notice if I'm learning on my own, I'm not laughing. I'm just like grinding it out until I get to a point where I'm either overwhelmed or exhausted, and then I stop. Whereas like in community learning, it's like you're learning, it's hard, people laugh. And then you're learning some more, people laugh. And something else goes on and it gets really hard and everybody has to go back because somebody is brave enough to ask a question when they don't understand. And then you
Yeah.
go back and you laugh about it, how everybody was trying to pretend that they knew what was going on and nothing was going on. But it's like it's more of a fun adventure where you go through all these things as opposed to just grinding it out on your own.
Which it also
Yeah.
helps you remember it too, because you have an experience
Yes.
also associated with it, which is awesome. And yeah, it's funny too, because like what you said there too with the questions, like there's so many times too where somebody will ask a question that somebody else was afraid to ask because they felt stupid or something. And then it's like, oh, not only did my question get answered, but I also realized that other people were in the same position as me. And like that's empowering too and helps you stay motivated. Because I think the biggest threat to anybody trying to learn, like especially software development, because it can be self-taught, is quitting. I think that's the biggest threat is not realizing that it just takes time and effort and putting that effort in and being like, too easy to it's so easy to find excuses to not do it that day or to quit or that it's no you're not good enough. But the reality is if you just stick with it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's one other thing that I was thinking about, and I posted it in the post yesterday that I think is really one of the most powerful things about having a strong supportive community. And that is networking, right? And in this field, more than any other, having a powerful network is gold, right? I can't tell you how many times I've gotten work just from knowing somebody, right? Who's like, oh, I know a web developer, or I have a project where I need another web developer to help me with this. And just knowing other developers is super powerful. But I also noticed something else this past week, which I think is super cool. Okay. So right now we have a bunch of people inside the web dev incubator. All of these people are learning web development. They're at different levels. Some of them know HTML and CSS. Some of them are much further along understanding some of the frameworks, things like that. I can tell you for sure, all of them individually feel scared to reach out to businesses and start working for businesses. But one of the things that I suggested this week is as part of our weekly code alongs, we actually find businesses that need a website and code them together. And I was blown away by the response of this. Every single person in the group was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do that. Not only that, but everybody was like, I also know somebody who I can bring in. Right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that,
But there are no jobs in web development.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Well, no, but what's interesting to me, even more of that, is that as an individual, nobody was brave enough or felt comfortable enough. It's not even a bravery thing. It's like they all, I think a lot of people are just like, I'm not good enough to be able to talk to a business and tell them that I can code this for them. But as a community, everybody was like, yeah, absolutely. I know like
Well,
at least one or two people that I could reach out to who want a website. And part of that was cool, reach out to them and let's build it for them. Right. And so I think that's a huge, huge aspect of having a community is you have that support and that network of people that you can lean on when you don't have everything that you need at your fingertips, right? Because we are humans and we're not going to have every single thing we need.
well, it's also like, taking on your first project's daunting. It is. Because,
Yes.
like anybody who's tried to code anything and fully from start to finish and then, production version, it's a lot of work. And like
Yeah,
it's always more work than you think it's gonna be. So I get the fear because, it's like,
totally.
okay, can I even complete this? It's like how much work is it gonna take? And it's so nice knowing that you have basically a team of people that you can work with. Each bring your own skills, each add to it, and that'll get, I mean, I think that was like that was a brilliant idea you had too, because I think like it'll get all these guys real experience, but also help them get over that hurdle and you feel so much like a real developer when you first I mean, when you do your first real project and get paid, I think it's like
Yeah,
such a
absolutely.
good feeling. And so I think this is going to be such a good way to get them into that without that fear of, I'm not going to be able to accomplish it or I'm going to fail or something's going to go wrong and then it'll be all over.
Good morning, Anthony. Chris said it's scary to call people you don't know and ask them for money, right? And I think that's a huge thing. And here's another reason why having that network is so powerful. I mean, I've done phone sales for probably 15 years of my life, and I know that Danny has not, right? So it may be way easier for me to pick up a phone and have a conversation with somebody, but he can learn from my experience of doing that, right? And that's part of um, why a community is so powerful because you learn other things. And Danny has all this experience that I don't have either, right? There's things that he brings to the table through philosophy and through teaching and things like that that I have nowhere near the experience of him, right? But as a community, we are this almost like machine that we have all these different parts that work together.
I think
And
about that all the time, like how like the three of us each bring these different skills that like it works so well together. And then like looking at our group, like the incubator group and like how it's like interesting to see how everybody's different unique skill sets like ends up coming out, but also being utilized. Because it's
yeah,
like, it's easy to admit. I mean, I have no problem admitting like when other people have skills like that because it's like, yeah, you do. Like the cold calling and the sales is a good example. Like you've done that for a long time. You just it's part of like what you know. And so it's
yeah,
not scary. When you've done thousands, I'm sure you've done thousands and thousands of calls.
probably
Like,
hundreds of thousands. Yeah,
yeah, you get over that hurdle, right? That for most people is scary. So it's like
Yeah.
that helps so much to see somebody else do it too and just not be nervous. And it's like, oh, okay, so I can just do this. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony. Anthony's calling us the Avengers.
Nice.
Love it, man. Yeah, I mean, I think there's just so much power in having a community. One of the things that I think I'd like to do more of is actually attend coding conferences, and I would love to share that when I do, so that people inside this community can come out to the conferences too, and we can get to know each other, because that is something super powerful, and not even just people inside the web dev incubator, but we already have, and anybody who's watching who's not inside the web dev incubator, if I know I've talked to a lot of people who are, they're struggling to find work or whatever, and it's too expensive for them. I totally understand, but use this resource. I mean, we've already built a free Facebook group that has a huge community in here of people who are doing exactly what you are doing. And it's a free place for you to basically get the community that maybe you can't join the web dev incubator yet, but you have it here where you can post about what you're working on, any issues that you have. And we're very responsive. I mean, I'm always surprised by how quickly
Yeah.
the posts inside this group are answered, and how quickly people are able to give, good replies, powerful, meaningful things as well.
You know,
Yeah.
the other thing too about community is when you're learning on your own, you only have yourself and whatever resources you
Yeah.
can find. And you can't, like, tutorials are great, and there's a ton of that. We've said it a million times. There's so many good resources for learning this stuff online that are available for free. But you cannot directly communicate with them. And I
Yeah.
think that's the other thing, like it's this sharing aspect of a community, like being able to share your code, being able to work through it with somebody is like so helpful in the learning process.
Oh, yeah.
Watching somebody code who's more experienced than you to see how they do things is so helpful. Like it's the type
Yeah.
of experience you cannot get on your own. And I think that's also a huge part of community is like just having those people that are also at different levels sharing and also you being able to share your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's another great reason. Chris just put in the comments, I need help today breaking down a site into smaller components so I can remake it into Next. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it, Chris.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great experience for everybody,
That's
right?
another good example too of community. It's like also getting around any new skill, any new thing that you're learning or new role you're taking on requires a way of thinking. And
Yeah.
I think that's what people struggle with. I've seen it so many times with software development is thinking in small pieces, being able to break these things down. I remember when we were doing the boot camp, like they would have us do these things, but never show us the start to finish of a project.
Or explain any of it
Yeah. Or explain
at
anything.
all.
Yeah.
They're like,
Give us
just
any
copy and
information.
paste this. All right, now copy and paste this.
And
Now
then
copy
hit
and
this
paste
button
this.
and you should see hello
Yeah.
world or whatever. Yeah. And it's like that's the other thing too, is being able to see like and get your head around the process of doing this and doing it in a
Yeah.
way that's going to work correctly and like be successful overall. It that also requires community, man. It helps so much. I think that's one of the things we've lost kind of now with the way we do things in the United States is we don't have like apprenticeships. We don't have like
Yeah.
mentors usually, right? Where you that used to be the way that you learned how to do a trade. And I
Yeah.
think in some sense we need to bring that back and we're trying to, right? Where you have
Yeah.
this community to rely on and you actually learn how to do it correctly from people who are experienced at different levels. It's awesome.
Yeah. One, well, let me say two things, because Anthony just reminded me of something that he said a while ago, but I thought of something else as well. One of the things that I like about a community is that you can also see how much you know, because as humans, like we go through this process of learning things and we forget the past when we didn't know so much.
Yeah.
So it is really cool to be able to see what other people are doing and know, oh, I already learned that. Like I already know all this different stuff, and see people who are actually a little behind you, so that you can see like, wow, I actually have gone a long way, right? Because I even think to this point, I'm like, there's so much I don't know about software development. Like I could learn so much more. But then I think about, wow, I've actually put in so many hours in coding and I do know so much. So it is nice to have that community just to see like, okay, I have come some some distance. The other thing that Anthony reminded me of is Anthony and I had a great conversation when he was joining the web dev incubator. He did a free action call. We discussed his goals and what he was looking for. And I mean, I saw his eyes light up when we were talking about this. And one of the reasons why is he said this, and I remember, pretty much exactly what he said, which is having a mentor is the biggest life hack that you can ever have.
Oh
And
yeah, dude.
I think there's so much power in that statement. Is there's no way to just jump and advance through something faster than having mentors, because they're literally people who have done what you want to do and are hand holding you and pulling you along the whole way so that you can do it faster. And I think what he said makes such sense. Like when he said that, I was like, wow, that's so powerful. And I've done that throughout my life, and I've seen other people who've had a lot of success do that. And it's really tough to rely on a Udemy course or just some like a YouTube tutorial and think that you're going to advance so fast. The truth is you need another human being, right? We are social creatures and we need that in order to advance.
Well, to that point, it's like I always think like any job you've ever been in, it's like it's always hard at first. You don't know the culture, you don't know the tasks, you don't know the things. But after like a few years or 5 years or 10, like all of a sudden it's really easy, And it's like
Yeah.
that's why the mentors are so important because when you have somebody that's at that stage, they're showing you they're not just teaching you how to do these things, they're also showing you how to be good at it, how to be this type of person that does this thing. It's a great role model and it's a great way to model an example. And like you said, we're community, we're social beings. We rely on and we model our behavior on others. So it's super helpful to have that. And that is a huge help too in the learning process, I think, overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, we're at 30 minutes. Do you guys have any other
Yeah,
comments?
burning question.
Yeah.
If if somebody is looking for a community, where do they
Mhm.
go?
Which part of you is burning, by the way? I think you might need to see a doctor. If somebody is interested in joining the Web Dev Incubator, you can just drop the word community into the comments and we'll reach out to you. We can also throw a link down there to join a free action call. And like Anthony has done and many of the other people inside the Web Dev Incubator have done, the action call is really an opportunity for two things. One is for you to get some free mentoring, right? We give you about 15-20 minutes of free mentoring, learn a little bit about your journey, give you some advice on how to advance your learning journey or finding a job, whatever it is that your goals are. We give you some mentorship. And then we also, ask you some questions to see if you're a good fit for the Web Dev Incubator and see if you're interested in joining. We give you all the information you want, answer any questions that you may have, and get you signed up if you want to join. So, yeah, Garcia says, it's my first time watching this due to time differences. I love the topic. Thanks for hanging out, Garcia. We
Yeah.
appreciate you making the time to come see us. And I know it's a little bit difficult for some people. It is for us too, but we like to have the consistency. And you can always rewatch these if anybody's watching now, or you probably know if you're rewatching it that you can replay these. They're all listed in the guide section of the Facebook group as well. We throw them in there so you can see all of them at once. We also have a podcast. If you guys didn't know that, you can digest these just by listening. If you don't want to see our beautiful faces, you can just listen to us as well. We have a podcast. You can just look up Code Noobs on any of your favorite like podcasting, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, and you'll find us there as well. The only benefit here is that those are old ones, and you get the fresh new ones if you check out, the ones inside the group. So with that, um, thanks for tuning in. If you're inside the Web Dev Incubator, we'll see you in about a half hour. If you're interested in it, write the word community in the comments and we'll reach out to you, or you can just DM us and we'll set up a call for you. Otherwise, I'll drop a link in there as well so that you guys can join. And if you're on the fence, this is probably the last week where you'll get beta pricing and then it's going to go up. So
Yeah.
take advantage while you have it. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see y'all in about 30 minutes if you're inside the incubator. If not, have a great week, and we'll see you next Saturday. Peace.
Later. I'm not stopping.